Hello, today I'm going to be taking a look at the Brave 8, which is the latest action camera from AKASO. This camera features dual coloured screens, shoots 4K at up to 60 frames per second, takes up to 48 megapixel stills, it shoots time-lapse at 8K, it shoots by 16 slow motion at up to 400 frames per second, and without any housing it is waterproof at up to 10 meters. If you use AKASO's waterproof case, it's waterproof at up to 16 meters. So pretty impressive specs. The camera is currently on sale. In the UK it will set you back just over £200. So at that price with those specs it seems a pretty good deal. Let's go ahead and get it unboxed and we'll take a closer look at it. The Brave 8 comes packaged very similar to AKASO's other cameras. We've got the camera at the top and a whole load of accessories at the bottom. So this is everything that comes in the box, and certainly if you buy an AKASO camera you won't be disappointed with the included accessories. So we've got a quick start guide, we've got the camera itself and the camera housing. We've got two batteries that come with the camera. They're both 1550 milliamp hour batteries, and we've also got a dual battery charger. We've got a USB-C connector on the charger itself, and it comes with a USB-C to A cable. AKASO include a remote control which you can use to record both videos and stills. We've got a whole range of mounting options, including the handlebar mounts included with the camera. The camera includes plenty of Velcro straps. We've got a cloth for cleaning the lens, we've got spare sticky pads for the mounts, and we've got cable ties as well. Okay, let's take a closer look at the camera itself. So in the front you can see we've got an LCD screen and we've got our lens which features 9 pieces of glass. On the top of the camera we've got two buttons. Over to the left hand side we've got our shutter button, where over to the right hand side we've got our power button. On the side of the camera we've got our mode button. The rear of the camera we've got our large touchscreen. Okay, so over on this side we've got the cutouts for the microphone, and we've got this little door which we'll go ahead and open. Behind the door we've got a USB-C connector, so you can charge the battery directly in the camera, and we've also got an SD card slot, so I'll go ahead and insert my SD card and then we'll go ahead and close the door again. On the bottom of the camera we've got another door. We'll go ahead and open that up, and this is where we're going to insert our battery. So we'll go ahead and put the battery in place, and then we can close the door again. The final thing I want to do is to show you how to switch on the front screen. Obviously this is going to be useful if you're recording yourself. You can only have one screen on at a time, either the front or the back. At the moment you can see our back screen is turned on. What we need to do is hold the mode button for 3 seconds. You'd hear a beep, and that indicates that the front screen has been turned on. There's no touchscreen functions in the front screen, it's just simply a display. And if we turn it round, you'll notice the back screen is currently turned off. Hold the mode button again till you hear the beep, and the back screen will turn on and the front screen turns off. Okay, let's go ahead and test out the video quality. Okay, so I'm out for a walk in my local area and I'm going to do a few different tests with the Brave 8. I'm going to compare it against my current action camera, which is the GoPro Hero7 Black. The reason I'm comparing it with it and not the GoPro Hero 10 is the price difference. The Brave 7, as we've said, is just over £200, and previously last year I compared the GoPro Hero 7 Black with the Brave 7 and it absolutely destroyed the Brave 7. So I want to do the same thing with the Brave 8 and compare it against the same camera. The first test I'm going to do is have a look at the image quality. So at the moment I'm recording on both cameras at 4K 60 frames per second, and I'm using the normal colour profile on the Brave 7. So hopefully by now, comparing the two images side by side, you'll get a good feel for what the image quality looks like on both the cameras. What I've done now is I've switched the Brave 7's colour profile over to Vivid. So hopefully you'll see a bit of a difference between this now and what it previously looked like in the normal colour profile. And again, still comparing against the GoPro Hero7 Black, both at 4K 60 frames per second. The next thing I want to test is the audio quality. At the moment you're hearing the audio coming out of my microphone here, recorded directly on my smartphone. Now, audio was a massive issue for the Brave 7, and in fact it was completely unusable when I tested it, so it'll be interesting to see, does the Brave 8 improve things? So what I'm going to do now is switch over to the audio being directly recorded from the GoPro, and at the moment you're hearing what the microphone in the GoPro sounds like. Now I've switched the audio over to the Brave 8, and this is what the audio being directly recorded on the microphone in the Brave 8 sounds like. So after my review of the Brave 7, where I reported serious issues with the microphone quality, AKASO sent me out this external microphone so that I could add it and test the performance. To me, it didn't seem to make much sense to do that, because the inbuilt microphone, which you're hearing now on the camera, needs to be of a good quality for an action camera. But what I'm going to do now is compare the audio quality you're hearing at the moment with that recorded with this external microphone. So as you can see now, I've got AKASO's external microphone plugged into the Brave 8, and the audio you're hearing now is recorded from that external microphone directly on the Brave 8. So hopefully this will give you a good idea if you're going to get any improvement in audio quality with their optional external microphone. Now, again, this does not come with a camera, you have to purchase it as an optional accessory. Okay, next thing to test is image stability. And again, with the Brave 7, this was a big failure. The image stability was absolutely awful. There was loads of artifacting on the screen and it looked terrible. So again, I'm really interested to see how they improve things with the Brave 8. What I've had to do is I've had to switch the image resolution down to 4K at 30 frames per second. At 4K 60 frames per second, the only option you have is the hyper smooth stabilization, which there's no stabilization done at all in the camera itself. You have to use AKASO's app, process the footage afterwards, and that adds the stability into it. So the first thing I want to do is test the image stability in the camera compared to the GoPro. So that's the reason for switching to the 30 frames per second, because that offers in-camera stabilization. I will of course test the hyper smooth later on, and actually the first lot of clips looking at the image quality at 60 frames per second were recorded with the hyper smooth turned on. So if the stabilization worked in the app, you'll have seen that. So for the first test I'm going to do is turn the cameras around, and I'm going to do a little bit of running to see what the footage looks like. Again, this is the image stabilization done directly in the camera. Okay, so still at 4K 30 frames per second, what I've done now with the Brave 8 is I've switched from in-camera stabilization over to hyper smooth. So as you're looking at the moment, the footage should actually be pretty shaky, because I haven't actually processed this footage post-production in the AKASO app. So I'm going to run a little bit with it on this setting to give you an idea of what it looks like. Okay, the footage you're now seeing has been processed in the AKASO Go app. I'm using the hyper smooth on the Brave 8, so the footage is not stabilized in the camera, but stabilized post-production. So you're going to give you an idea of what this looks like compared to the footage stabilized in the camera. So again, the same running test. The final test for image stability is I'm going to put the cameras on a head strap. I'm going to do one test with the GoPro. It obviously uses the GoPro's in-camera stability, which is very good. Then I'm going to use the Brave 8, first using the in-camera stability, and then second I'm going to test the hyper smooth. All images recorded at 4K, 30 frames per second. Okay, so that's the end of the testing. I'm going to go home and look at the footage, listen to the audio quality, and I'll be back my thoughts on the Brave 8. So we're now reached the stage in the video where I need to tell you what I think of the Brave 8. And I think the first thing I can say is I was incredibly impressed again with the amount of accessories in the box. And this is something you just don't get if you buy a GoPro. The money that it would cost you to go out and buy these accessories separately with a GoPro would almost be the price of this camera. So it's incredibly impressive that you're getting so much in the box. Moving on to look at the user interface and user experience with the Brave 8. And again, I think this is much better than with the Brave 7. When I was going through the menus in the Brave 7, I found them really clunky, and I wasn't sure if I was actually turning something on or turning it off. And a few times I had changed the settings the opposite of what I had wanted to do without actually realizing. With the new user interface, you're actually swiping in from the top, the bottom, and each of the sides, and the settings are much better laid out. It's almost like using a GoPro. So this was much better. There was really only one thing I didn't like with it, and that was having the microphone button on the home screen. And the reason I didn't like it was this would not be a setting I would change that often, but having it right on the home screen meant it was really easy to press it by accident. And actually at one point when I was coming back from one of the other menus, I did press it and actually turned the microphone off. I had realised before I started recording, which was good, but if I hadn't realised that, my footage could actually have been destroyed. So I think that's a better thing to have hidden away in one of the menus so you're not going to press it by accident. Moving on to image quality, and again here I was fairly impressed. I thought there was very little between the Brave 8 and the GoPro Hero 7 Black. I maybe slightly preferred the GoPro Hero 7 Black because of the way the colour profile was, but in terms of image quality there was very little between them. In terms of audio quality, the audio recorded using the internal microphone from the Brave 8 was significantly better than that of the Brave 7. The Brave 7's audio was absolutely awful from the original camera, and in fact I had labelled it as completely unusable in my previous review. This is completely different. When it works, it is actually fairly similar in terms of quality and sound levels to that coming out the GoPro Hero 7 Black. It's important that I say when it works because there was a tendency for the left channel to record quite well, but the right channel to disappear, and you probably heard that in the video. At other times it worked perfectly well. So big improvement, and I imagine as the software updates progress, those issues will iron out and you'll actually have pretty usable audio from the internal microphone in the camera. I did actually get a chance to test out AKASO's external microphone, and I wasn't at all impressed with the quality of the audio coming from it. I actually found the internal audio recorded in the internal microphone was actually better, so I would stay away from the external microphone. Moving on to image stabilization, and it's good news, the Brave 8 is significantly better than the Brave 7. So with this camera, you've got two options for image stabilization. You can use the in-camera stabilization, or you can use the hyper smooth feature. The hyper smooth feature, the footage isn't stabilized by the camera at all while it's been recorded, and you do the stabilization using the AKASO app afterwards. Now, looking at the quality of the image, the stability was significantly better using the hyper smooth feature. The in-camera stabilization was much better than with the Brave 7. In fact, the Brave 7 footage I thought was absolutely useless and unusable due to the very poor in-camera stabilization. This was very definitely usable, but it was noticeably inferior to the GoPro Hero 7 Black. The hypersmooth feature was much better. Comparing it to the in-camera stabilization from the GoPro Hero 7 Black, I still think the GoPro Hero 7 Black had a slight advantage here. There was a very slight artifacting with the Brave 8 hypersmooth feature, but it was really subtle, and there was very little difference between the footage. So in general, image stabilization is much better, but there was two main issues for me with it. The first is, one of the big features of this camera is that it shoots 4K at 60 frames per second. One of the things they don't tell you, however, is that you cannot use the 4K 60 frames per second with the in-camera image stabilization. The only option you have at that resolution and frame rate is to use the hypersmooth feature. And when you compare the image quality between the two, you might ask, why is that such a problem, since the hypersmooth gives much better stabilization than the in-camera stabilization. The big problem with it is that it's an extra step you have to take at the end of the day, and it makes getting your footage off the camera much more difficult. In fact, to get all the footage off the camera probably took me the best part of an hour at the end of the recording session, because you can't simply plug your memory card into your computer and get the footage. What you have to do is connect your camera to the AKASO app. You then have to, over Wi-Fi, transfer the files from the camera to your phone and use the phone to process them. And then you have to then transfer them off your phone back to your computer. The AKASO app worked fairly well most of the times, but processing a 3-minute clip was maybe taking 7 or 8 minutes to do it fully. On a few occasions it failed right at the end, and then I had to repeat the same process over again. So it was a fairly time-consuming and labour-intensive process of being involved with moving clips one by one over to the phone and then back off and onto the computer. And compared to using the GoPro, where I was plugging the memory card into the computer, copying it, leaving it alone, and the files were all there and stabilised at the end. So now we reach the stage in the review where I need to tell you, should you go out and get this camera? And as we've mentioned, I've been fairly impressed with it in terms of image quality. The image stability is pretty good if you use the hypersmooth function. And I think once they've ironed out a few of the issues with the sound quality coming out a single channel, you're actually going to have pretty acceptable audio quality. As well, you're getting an absolute massive amount of accessories. The only slight issue I maybe have with it is the price. At £200, it's not going to cost you that much more to get a GoPro Hero7 Black, which if I had the two cameras side by side and was told to pick one, I would still go with the GoPro Hero7 Black, because I think the in-camera image stability is just so much easier to use, and you're going to save yourself a whole lot of time at the end without having to run the footage through the app. So at the moment, at the current price of £200, I wouldn't be rushing out to get this camera. However, as time goes on, the price will almost certainly come down. And I think if you can get this camera for around about £150, given the amount of accessories you're getting from it, I think you'll be incredibly happy and get incredibly good value for money. I think just at the moment, it's a little bit too expensive compared to the GoPro Hero7 Black, which you can get for a little bit extra money, and I think you'll actually be slightly happier with that camera. So hopefully you find this video useful. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up. If you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well, and I'll see you in the next video.